On today's edition of the show, we're going to discuss the series schedule for the Florida Panthers against the Carolina Hurricanes. We're going to chat about whether rest is going to help or hurt the Cats. We're also going to talk about if there is a specific player or a unit on the Carolina Hurricanes that scares us the most heading into this Eastern Conference final matchup. And we're going to discuss, does Florida's road to the Eastern Conference final actually give them an advantage?
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, May 17th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez. You can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers and on Instagram as well at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here to listen to Locked On Panthers to get your daily Florida Panthers fix. So, Cats fans, we have more clarity on what the schedule is going to look like with the Florida Panthers and the Carolina Hurricanes playing each other in the Eastern Conference final. We're going to discuss so much more of that, but we do have a schedule finally after so much anticipation, speculation as well. And also, the best part about it is that there are no overlaps with the Miami Heat, who are also in the Eastern Conference final. And of course, with this show dropping on Wednesday, it is a Miami Heat game day, but waiting one more day for the Florida Panthers to play game one of their Eastern Conference final series against the Carolina Hurricanes. And no better than to discuss this with my friend Jacob Winans on another edition of Winans Wednesday. Jacob, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, as usual. It's awesome. Like I was just saying right before recording, it's super cool to be doing a game preview at this late stage of the postseason. Uncharted territory for us, but I mean, what a time in the South Florida sports region. We get to enjoy a Heat game on the Panthers' day off, and we're going to be alternating for the next couple of weeks, and hopefully beyond that. So, man, this is a South Florida sports fan's dream right now. We're living it.
We're on cloud nine, that's for sure. And
yep.
Listen, if you have regular cable television and you don't watch anything else other than sports and you just watch the Florida Panthers and the Miami Heat, you won't need to change the channel because both teams happen to be on TNT for their Eastern Conference final matchup. But let's go to the Florida Panthers perspective. Obviously, this is a Florida Panthers show, and with the schedule, game one is of course Thursday, May 18th. Excuse me. And game two is Saturday the 20th. 3 is the 22nd, and they're going to be alternating days and off days as well. So the next Monday and Wednesday will be the home games for games 3 and 4. Back on the road in Carolina for game 5 next Friday, and then game 6 will be Sunday the 28th, with game 7 being on the 30th of May. So alternating nights, no gaps like there was in the first two series. But let's talk more about the gaps, Jacob, for the Panthers, and a gap that of rest when it comes to this team. Of course, clinching game 5 last Friday, May 12th, and then having 5 days off between games 5 and of the previous series and game 1 of this one. And of course, the Carolina Hurricanes are going to get 6 due to them clinching a day earlier with the Florida Panthers. And of course, when the Florida Panthers won game 7 against Boston, they went right into it against the Toronto Maple Leafs. I wasn't expecting that series to start right away, but hey, the Panthers packed for 3 days worth of games, and their momentum carried over with winning, of course, games 1 and 2 of the previous round. But do you think this rest is going to help the Panthers, or do you think it's going to hurt them?
I think I think you can look at it both ways, but in this case, I think it's going to help more than it's going to hurt. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, um, it's not like it's a situation where the Panthers have been resting and Carolina has been playing all these games and they're in a rhythm and the Panthers are not. Carolina's been resting for longer than the Panthers have. So it ends up really kind of balancing out. And I think at this time of year, it doesn't take long to get back into the swing of the game. The playoff hockey, as soon as you get into that game, it takes maybe a shift, like get a couple of shots on goal, get a couple of hits under your belt, and everybody's back into playoff intensity. So I don't think there's going to be any drop off there. If anything, there should be more energy. I think it helps the players from a health perspective. The Panthers are, if you look across the rosters still remaining on paper, the Panthers have the least depth of any team still playing hockey right now, which we can be honest about that. We don't have to. We can be direct and upfront about that. The Panthers are not the deepest team left in the dance, and honestly, it's perfectly fine. They've embraced that they're an underdog and that they're rolling with what they have, and right now those guys are getting it done. But if you're going to roll with those guys, then proper rest is important, and having a few days off is big for guys who came into the playoffs battling injuries like a Sam Bennett, guys like Kachuk and Barkov and Montour and Ekblad who have been eating up a ton of big minutes. It's good for them to get a rest. And then goaltending, Sergei Bobrovsky getting some time off to rest and reset. I think it's good for him. You hope he can keep his rhythm. His hot streak doesn't fall off with those few days off. But again, it's the same situation on the other side. Those guys have been resting too, so it's a pretty even playing field where that's concerned. I think it's more beneficial than detrimental at this stage. Going into the second half of the playoffs, is having guys healthy and rested is huge, especially for a team like the Panthers that we don't have the luxury of that depth. So I'm happy they got some time off. They definitely earned it. They won 2 really, really hard, challenging series, and to get some rest now is big. And I think the last 2 games against Toronto, they were obviously a game 4 loss, but then the game 5 win, they were really gutsy efforts, and not so. It was more of a dogfight than a track meet, and I think that kind of takes its toll. We saw the Panthers kind of lose a little bit of their steam. They were able to gut out the win, but their foot was not pressed down on the gas as hard as it had been beforehand, which that comes and goes in the playoffs. The playoffs are a different battle, and that's just kind of the nature of the beast. So I'm more happy about the rest than concerned about it.
Yeah, and I also think about it like this, because if you were to clinch your spot into the Stanley Cup final, you might not get that rest immediately before the final. So it's best to get it now. And if you ask
Yep.
players what they think, if you're putting yourself into the shoes of the players, do they want that rest or do they want to continue playing? Of course, you want to play the least amount of games in a series possible. That's I'm not breaking any news here, but with that versus the gap between another series as well as the rest and recovery period, and you mentioned it best, goaltending for Sergei Bobrovsky. I mean, you also, it's not necessarily the same situation of when the Florida Panthers went into the All-Star break on when they got that big emotional win against Boston. They got a few days off. Of course, some players played in the All-Star game, and then of course you could argue that the momentum of the All-Star game being here helped the Panthers, but it wasn't in the position that they are clinching something. They were fighting and clawing to just get in the dance, and the Panthers have been doing that. And like you said, it's going to take a shift or two just to get back into the groove of things, because these guys are pros after all. It's not like they're still in their development stage of playing hockey. It's not like they're going to forget in a matter of a week. So it's only going to take a little bit for these guys, and like you said, the guys who were battling it all year, they know that their mind is shifted already to this series. They already put the Maple Leaf series behind them, and also I think the rest is definitely going to be beneficial for this Florida Panthers team. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss what is a specific unit or specific players on the Carolina Hurricanes side of things that concern Jacob and I the most when it comes to this Eastern Conference final matchup. We're going to discuss this next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about eBay Motors. And for a championship team, it's all about making sure that every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right. The first time around, just add your vehicle to My Garage and look for the green check so you know the part will fit, or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game where you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win after the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, right fit, right price, and on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And every dayers, make sure to come back for tomorrow's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, where I will be doing a crossover edition of the show with the host of Locked On Carolina Hurricanes. So make sure to come back for tomorrow's edition of the show. But Jacob, of course, this Carolina Hurricanes team, like I spoke about with Aaron Brown yesterday, they have been knocking on the door for the last few years, an Eastern Conference final appearance, and of course took a few steps back, losing in the second round and then the first round once since then. But now they're back in the Eastern Conference final, trying to take that next step for them. Of course, this is a team that the Florida Panthers had their fair share of battles over the last year, even in the regular season, going back to the 56 game season where they faced each other 8 times. And I want to ask you, what's a unit? It could be a unit or player or a specific player. What is that concerns you the most when it comes to this matchup in the Eastern Conference final between these two teams?
Well, it'd be really easy for me to just say the entire team because Carolina is the team that I actually picked preseason to win the Stanley Cup, and I really kind of stuck by that the entire season until, of course, my loyalty and my hope are through the roof, and now that's of course completely shifted. But Carolina was my preseason pick to win the Cup, and I think they're a very, very well constructed team. I think what scares me the most, they've been playing really balanced hockey. Their defense is, of course, probably the nastiest defense in the league as far as depth and talent. Them missing arguably their best player, Andrei Svechnikov, is a big hole for them to fill. The two things that scare me the most, though, with all of that said, their penalty kill is absolutely terrifying to me. That penalty kill has the ability to completely eliminate any power play they want to, and if our power play is not going, that could be the difference in a goal or 2 goals. And what we saw so much for the Panthers this season was really dominating games everywhere except special teams, and then special teams being the reason that they suffer a 1 or 2 goal loss. And Carolina has special teams edge written all over them. Their power play is good enough to score, not necessarily at will, but they're good for at least just around a goal a game if you give them enough opportunities on the power play. Of course, getting Teuvo Teravainen back is a big boost to that power play.
After a fractured hand too.
Yep, and he's back ahead of schedule. So their special teams are really, really concerning to me. That their penalty kill, for listeners and watchers who aren't necessarily familiar with their style on the penalty kill, they are an ultra aggressive penalty kill. they send both forwards at the puck carrier. You get maybe a second, 2 seconds max to make a pass once that puck is on your stick. They don't sit around. It's the opposite of how the Panthers play the penalty kill, where we sit in that box or diamond shape. Carolina does not do that. They charge right at the puck carrier. They try to force a turnover. They try to get a shorthanded goal, and we've given up shorthanded goals to Carolina multiple times. So their penalty kill scares me. And then honorable mention would be the Jordan Staal line, especially with Martinook going back to that line, most likely with Teravainen back in the top six. That line scares me because they're just elite forechecking. And what concerns me is in the faceoff circle, and then just being able to throw Jordan Staal on the ice whenever Sasha Barkov is out there. This series is going to be the toughest test for Barkov of this playoffs. I think he faced a Patrice Bergeron that was not at 100%, and right now he's about to have his toughest matchup because Jordan Stahl's not out there to score goals. He's not out there to provide offense. His sole mission is to shut down Barkov in that top line, and Barkov is going to have to be at his very, very best to produce in this series. I think that's another area of concern for me.
Yeah, and Jordan Martinook, no points in the Islanders series, and then gets 10 in this series against the New Jersey Devils. I mean, he was on waivers.
Hockey is funny.
Yeah, he was on waivers earlier in the season. Nobody picked him up, and not only are the Carolina Hurricanes killing penalties at a 90% rate, but they have 3 shorthanded goals in the postseason this year, including a game where that 8-4 game against the New Jersey Devils, where there were 3 shorthanded goals in that game alone, and just crazy how they were able to just score shorthanded. I mean, sometimes they'll even bring 3 guys up to the blue line to force to deny a zone entry when Carolina is on the penalty kill. So that is very scary unit for the Carolina Hurricanes facing up against the Panthers. I mean, you have Brent Burns, Jacob Slavin on the blue line as well. And this is once again, bears repeating, the top 2 teams in the NHL in blue line scoring as well. So these teams are so well matched. I mean, also think about this: 5-on-5 goals, 5-on-5 scoring in their series against the Islanders, 11-10. Islanders actually scored more 5-on-5 goals in that series. Yep. But then in the New Jersey series, 17-10 in favor of Carolina. What does that mean? What does that tell you? That means when it comes to teams that are fast-paced like the New Jersey Devils, they are able to neutralize that type of pace. The Panthers are not that team that they were last year. So it gives me a better indication that the 5-on-5 play could be a little bit. It won't be at the margin that Carolina had against the New Jersey Devils, and that they could. I can't necessarily predict who's going to necessarily dictate the pace of the game. That's the thing, because of how well these teams are built. But you talk about the Florida power play. You mentioned Carolina's power play, that they aren't necessarily the best unit, but they can score timely power play goals.
Yeah,
Florida's power play for the playoffs is 27%. Carolina's is at 18%. But of course, the Boston series is going to skew their numbers a little bit from being at 59%. Of course, it went up for the Leafs series as well. It's crazy to still think that the Florida Panthers scored more power play goals than the Leafs, but but the Carolina Hurricanes, they just don't give up much on special teams. And of course, you could put any of the 3 goalies. Yes, it's going to be Freddie Anderson in the crease for the Carolina Hurricanes, but it's going to be really hard to get. You're going to have to bring definitely your A game in on that special team units for sure.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point there, and what scares me about the Hurricanes on the flip side, even though their power play percentage isn't through the roof, they play a style on the power play that I'm a little bit envious of, to be completely honest with you, and it is conducive to success, and we're going to have to really hope that the Panthers key in on this. They are not at all afraid to just take point shots and hope for deflections, hope for traffic. They're so good at that, and they score a ton of goals that way. It doesn't have to look pretty, and Carolina's not a team that cares about making it look pretty. They just get pucks on net, they get traffic, and a guy like Brent Burns really feeds on those kind of opportunities. So it's something the Panthers are going to have to keep an eye on. But there, with the things that concern me, there's also equal amounts of things that I feel better about than I would have if it was last year's team, for example. Like last year's Panthers team would have had a really hard time dealing with a really physical, slow it down, dictate the pace type of Hurricanes team like we're facing right now. I think what we're seeing the difference in is the Panthers of this season. Look what they just did to a Toronto team that's super high end skill, super fast, pace is through the roof. The Panthers completely eliminated their star players in that series because this is a different style Panthers team. This Panthers team is almost exactly what you're seeing in Carolina. That's what makes this matchup so intriguing, is because they play such a similar style now, where beforehand, Carolina is probably more built for the playoffs than we were. This year, stylistically, this is going to be such a good matchup because I think both teams have a really similar idea of what they want to do, and it's just going to be about which one is going to force the other one to do it and dictate the terms. So I think that's something that makes me really excited for this series. I feel like we've got a good shot where that's concerned. And then as far as the penalty kill concern goes, the Panthers have the antidote to a super aggressive penalty kill, and that is number 19, Matthew Tkachuk. The strategy here, and this is, like you said earlier, to quote you, this is not me breaking any news. Everyone knows this. It's just a matter of, can we do it? The strategy to neutralize a super aggressive penalty kill that pressures the point and rushes at puck carriers is to essentially set it up backwards. And you have to make your plays from below the goal line. Matthew Tkachuk is the number one playmaker in the entire NHL with passes and assists from below the goal line. So those opportunities should be there. It's going to be on Montour, on Barkov, on Bennett, on Ekblad to get those pucks below the goal line. But once they're there, that's where Matthew Tkachuk can go to work. Sam Reinhart's going to get his opportunities in front. You just have to beat that first Russia forecheck, and you can set up the entire power play from below the goal line, and that's what Matthew Tkachuk was brought here to do. So I think, again, this is such an exciting matchup. Even if I wasn't a Panthers fan, this is like a hockey fan's dream, because it's two styles that are so similar, but they have so many like small details and nuances that really clash, and I think it's going to make for an excellent series.
Yeah, and don't forget Sam Bennett, the ability for him to take away the eyes away from Freddie Anderson as well.
Yeah.
And also, when it comes to a fun matchup, don't tell that to the traditionalist hockey fans as well. Don't tell them that, Jacob, because they definitely won't believe you there. That's for sure.
Tough year to be a northerner and a northern fan base in the NHL. Real tough year for that.
Just a little bit, but we're gonna transition to segment number 3, where we're gonna ask the question: does Florida's road to the Eastern Conference Final give them an advantage coming into this series? We're gonna discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're gonna tell you all about Birddogs, and I feel better when wearing Birddogs. They're stretchy fabric that makes my legs look great, and they're comfier than my other shorts and pants. They give me the freedom to wear one pair of shorts on the golf course, to a meeting, to a date, or hanging out with friend. Bert Kreischer wakes up at his lake house wearing Birddogs, goes for a swim, smokes a cigar, grills burgers, and chills with his family, all in shorts he associates with the summer. Birddogs. College football nerds say they're the perfect pants for dads and have a little extra gut. Birddogs makes them look great and feel comfortable. Part of my take, host PFT famously never wears pants, and the only shorts he truly loves are Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/lockedonnhl, and when you enter promo code LOCKEDONNHL, they'll throw a free custom Birddog Yeti style tumbler with every order. Again, that's birddogs.com/lockedonnhl. And when you enter promo code LOCKEDONNHL, they'll throw a free custom Birddogs Yeti style tumbler with every order. Segment number 3 here on this Winans Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, where Jacob Winans is back for another edition of the show. And Jacob, this this road for the Panthers, it's been unpredictable, unexpected, and it's been fun, more importantly. And it's of course, it's the Cinderella story in the NHL. And I just continue to wonder with Carolina getting to this point, because just like you, Carolina was my preseason pick to go to the Cup. It was Carolina versus Edmonton. Edmonton's no longer in the dance. I thought it was going to be a rematch of the 2006 final in this year, but the pick but of course that is not a possibility. And of course, like you said, the Florida Panthers connection makes it. I don't want it to happen, obviously. But let's discuss more about Florida's road to get here. Obviously, beat the President's Trophy winners, 40 some odd point difference. Beat the second best power play unit in the National Hockey League. But then you think about the Carolina Hurricanes' road to get here. Face possibly the runner-up in the Vezina Trophy in Ilya Sorokin. And some people could argue that Sorokin could finish first, even though Allmark's numbers are better, but he did play 14 more games than Linus Allmark. So when you think about that aspect, who's more valuable to their team as far as winning the Vezina? But Islanders struggled with depth scoring. Barzal was just coming back for the postseason. Go up against a little bit of an inexperienced team in the New Jersey Devils. Yes, very youthful team, still on the come up as far as them trying to contend for a Stanley Cup. Still not quite there. So do you think that Florida's route and road to the Eastern Conference Final actually gives them a little bit of an advantage going into this series?
I will say yes, but I won't say that it's as big of an advantage as it could be given different circumstances, and I'll explain that. Um, I'll say yes because the Panthers beat two bona fides, and the Panthers are battle tested in these playoffs. Without a doubt, the most battle tested team the entire postseason this year. No one else is coming back from a 3-1 deficit with two of those three games on the road. No one else is winning an overtime game 7 in the fashion that the Panthers did on the road in Boston. No one else has had to come back from more deficits to win games. I think the Panthers, I don't have a stat for this in front of me, but there's no doubt in my mind that the Panthers have had the most lead changes in games throughout this postseason. I would bet just about anything on that. So
there's been a lot of blowouts in round 2. So yeah,
it's a pretty safe bet. The Panthers are the most battle-tested team in the playoffs. So I think that gives them a big advantage where that's concerned. I don't think there's any team left in the playoffs that's kind of handled adversity face on with as much success as the Panthers have, and there will be adversity. This is a series against Carolina. This is not the Panthers are not known for winning game ones. If the Panthers come out and lose game 1, that's adversity. If the Panthers drop a game at home, that's adversity. But it's also not panic because the Panthers have won games with their backs against the wall. And honestly, I think we as fans need to do a little bit better at handling that adversity the way the players do. Because, I mean, some of the reactions when we're up 3-0, you lose one game against Toronto, and everyone's thinking, "Oh my God, we're gonna blow it." It's 3-1. Like, relax. But I would bet just about anything there's going to be much more adversity than a 3-1 lead for the Panthers in this series. So the players are capable of handling that, and I think they're battle tested. So yes, I think it's an advantage. I don't think Carolina's at that much of a disadvantage given their path. Yes, they were opportunistic against the Islanders who kind of limped into the playoffs. And yes, they were opportunistic against the Devils team that hasn't really been here before. But this is not a team that's in their first rodeo either. Like you said, they've been banging at the door, and the same core has been there in Carolina. This is the same group that's been to the playoffs multiple years, has been trying to get through. They're motivated, they're battle tested over a course of seasons, not just this postseason, but previous seasons. They've seen it all in the postseason as a group, and I don't think they're going to be rattled by anything. So again, it's another just another reason why this series is going to be pretty epic. It's what's the old saying? Immovable object or unstoppable force, whatever it is. The terminology there. That's what this feels like. Unstoppable force versus immovable object. We'll see what comes out of it. But I think Panthers are really battle tested as far as this year goes, and Carolina they're a veteran group. They've been here, they've done that. They're trying to make their breakthrough. So I think it's two teams that have a lot of experience.
Yeah, advantage in that aspect as far as their road and adversity doesn't necessarily mean series win. Of course, for this Panthers team, of course, it gives you an opportunity to, when you do hit the ice, you're not going to be. It's basically saying that you're not going to be intimidated by your opponent because of who they faced off against in the first two rounds. So I think the Florida Panthers are definitely going to be ready when it comes to game one on Thursday night. So I won't make my predictions until tomorrow when I do my crossover edition of the show with the guys over at Locked On Hurricanes. But since you won't be back until next Wednesday, I want to hear your predictions. Who wins this series and in how many games, Jacob?
So you're going to put me on the spot here, and I don't want to. I hate to do this because I don't want to jinx us, and I thought we were going to lose the first series, and I really thought Toronto was going to probably take that second round series in a long, dragged out series in 7 games. But the Panthers have really made me believe, and belief is a dangerous thing, man, because I'm getting my hopes up again. But I'm gonna say Cats in 7. And it's weird because if Carolina was at full strength, if they had Max Pacioretty, who not necessarily a big part of their core or anything, he's a new addition and barely played, but he was supposed to come in and be that big playoff performer. And if they had Andrei Svechnikov, I would probably flip it and say Canes in 7. But I think Panthers' high-end star power just barely edges the Hurricanes, and I think Bobrovsky's going to outplay Freddie Anderson in this series. So I'm going Cats in 7. I hope I'm wrong. I hope the Cats get it done earlier than that, because I don't know if I can handle another Game 7 this year. I really don't know, because Game 7 Boston, that was
overtime.
In overtime. We're Panthers fans. We have not been in a lot of those moments, and my heart was about to jump through my chest. So I'm not ready for that. I don't need that again. I really don't want to visit a cardiologist right now. So I'll say Cats in 7, but please God, let them do it in 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm. So the Cats have made Jacob Winans a believer, and you'll definitely know tomorrow whether they are making me a believer or not. You're going to have to tune in for tomorrow's edition of the show to definitely find that out. But Jacob, I want to thank you so much for joining me once again on this edition of Winans Wednesday on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Tell everybody where they can find you online.
Yep, you can find me on Twitter at Jacob Winans 8. I'll be super active there through the games, and I'll leave you all with a Michael Scott quote tonight. So no doubt about it, I'm ready to get hurt again. That's where I'm at.
That's a perfect ending for sure. Thank you so much, Jacob, and I will see you next Wednesday, my friend.
Looking forward to it. Thanks.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Steve Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And every dayers, make sure you come back for tomorrow's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, where I will be doing a crossover edition to preview Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final between the Florida Panthers and the Carolina Hurricanes with the guys over at Locked On Hurricanes. So make sure to come back tomorrow for that edition of the show. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans. and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.